Ooga, fucking Ooga, cunts. It's Schmeckle. We've got a fucking fun one today, cunts. We've got some questions from some of YouTube's top snowflakes, and even though I know they weren't aimed at me, I'm gonna answer them anyway because I'm just that fucking helpful. So tie your nooses, open up that bleach, and awkwardly position your shotguns. First one to the end gets a biscuit. Roll the shit.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
I would agree with you. Were the two reactions in any way similar? On the SJW side of the fence, the reactions are to things like microaggressions, improper pronouns, disproved statistics like the wage gap, and of course, perceived bullying by people with dissenting opinions. The demands made by SJWs in order to rectify these perceived issues involve things like censorship, affirmative action, privilege taxes, and, of course, more safe space echo chambers. On the other side of the fence, the reactions are to things like demands for censorship, demands for affirmative action, demands for privilege taxes, and, of course, demands for more safe space echo chambers. The demands made by anti-SJWs, at least as pertaining to SJWs, are non-existent beyond keep your stupid out of our laws and try better next time.
What is it with you people and skulls?
Good question, cunt. I'll bring it up at the next patriarchy meeting.
How do you define right-wing? Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing, yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left. Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you? And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labelling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
My personal issue with being labeled right-wing would be that it's incorrect. To be entirely honest, I'm not sure what the appropriate label is for my political beliefs, but I'm certainly more left-leaning than right. That's one of the problems with the regressive left. If you don't buy into all of their bullshit, then you must be a far-right Republican fascist asshole. I'll have you know I'm only one of those things, thanks. And yes, we all realize that the terms SJW and regressive are pejorative. That's because the attitudes that they describe are detrimental. The words denote bad things, so they have bad connotations. Christ cunt, it's not hard.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter? Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
I'm always open to conversation with the other side, provided they can handle an adult conversation. By this I mean that facts and statistics will be held in higher esteem than feelings and comfort. At least from what I've seen, this seems to be the case with the majority of other anti-SJW YouTubers as well. The issue seems to be that you cunts don't accept the offers of conversation. But by all means, Tom, if you want a conversation, all you need to do is ask. I won't even tell you to drink bleach, promise.
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see. How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, oh, I was just trolling you, oh, I was just shitposting, or TLDR?
This is a little bit disingenuous. You're relying on the idea that in order to be logical or reasonable, one must always be logical and reasonable. This is false. Using your brain now and then doesn't turn you into Spock. You're also ignoring the fact that many of the most popular anti-SJWs are comedians who maintain their persona so that they can entertain their fucking audience. This means on a platform where you're only given 140 characters, you still need to be able to put out something entertaining. This means turning up the funny and the crude so that your audience will keep coming back. It's not fucking hard.
No, seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
I told you I'd ask at the meeting, cunt. Don't fucking rush me.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had and only serve now as casual insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
Rowlands, you cunt. Did you really just complain about buzzwords? Did this feminist cunt just complain about buzzwords? Let's see. How many words have you fuckers raped and re-raped until they no longer have any fucking meaning? Sexist, racist, transphobic, bigot, patriarchy, bullying, harassment, binary, spectrum, misogyny, problematic, oppression, rape, ally, equality, and consent. And those are just the words that I can think of at the moment. And that's not even counting the buzzwords that you cunts flat out created, like mansplaining or manspreading. Christ, cunt, fucking talk to me about buzzwords.
For the last time, what is it with you people and committing actual literal felonies? Like, you might want to work on that? I mean, I thought the Ralph retort was so rational when he was fantasizing about beating up women with dyed hair, but then he assaulted a police officer, and finally I was convinced.
I wasn't aware that the Ralph retort guy had been involved in any crimes, but I'm certainly not one to react before knowing the details. That aside, is this a trend among anti-SJWs? Because I've certainly seen more of it from Black Lives Matter and feminists, and those types don't typically overlap with us.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
Kristi, cunt, if you can find me a robust feminist argument, there are two possibilities. One, it will be from an actual, reasonable feminist rather than one of you third-wave SJW types, and there's a good chance that I'll have nothing to refute. Two, it will be one of you lot, and well, then it won't be very robust at all. But do feel free to send them along to challenge me.
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered? And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So yeah.
I would be willing to put aside my differences with just about anybody to solve just about any real problem. I would not, however, be willing to throw logic and reason to the wind in an attempt to find a mutually agreeable solution. Which isn't at all to say that it's my way or no way, only that there would need to be a serious curb in your SJW logic in order for us to actually accomplish anything.
What is third wave feminism? Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism that you have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
Steve Shives. Steve Shives. Your question seems like it would be fairly easy to answer by directing you to watch literally any video created by literally any of us about feminism. It takes a very special sort of stupid to imagine that these videos say nothing beyond, I hate feminism. Your questions have been answered numerous times, but for the sake of not making you search, I'll fill you in, cunt. Third-wave feminists are easily identifiable by their concentration on minute issues such as microaggressions and false issues such as the wage gap and rape culture. They have a tendency to misrepresent or ignore statistics in order to push for an equality that they already possess. They are hypocritical and rely more on buzzwords than actual content. But you know this, Steve. Cunt.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men, but not ladies? Fuck you, get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit.
I don't know if that guy is an MRA. I would assume that most people don't know if that guy's an MRA. He kinda seemed like he was just a loud cunt. But we know that Trigley is a feminist. Add that to the fact that there are many, many very vocal incarnations of Trigglypuff in modern feminism, and you see why that's the image that comes to mind for most people.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists? Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
That's actually a fair question. I'll give you this one, cunt. I can only speak for myself, although I'm sure much of the community would agree, but I don't have anything against feminism as a whole. It's like Stevie Boy said, Our issue is with a specific type of feminist. If you're not one of them, then we have no issue. Let's hit the bar sometime, cunt.
If SJWs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems, then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years? I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like even lower, right? You know, you've got the real problems, you've got the things that feminists worry about, and then you've got you going, oh, how dare they? Just, how dare they have different priorities from me? Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining forever for a living. That's healthy.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
It depends which feminist academia you're talking about. If it's written by logical, rational feminists, then I have no reason to speak about it as it's not harmful and doesn't need to be debunked. If it's written by the type of feminist that this crowd represents, then it's fair game, as long as it's the entertaining type of stupid and not just the annoying kind.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate? Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
Steve Shives. I'm going to be upfront with you, cunt. When it comes to second-wave feminism, I've been a bit lax on my reading, which is irrelevant since I don't talk about second-wave feminism. What I do know about it is that it took place in a time when feminism was actually needed and that it fought against actual sexism and actual problems that women faced. This is not what third-wave feminism does. Third-wave feminism is taking place in a time when feminism has become irrelevant and is tackling issues that weren't issues until they found a way to warp them into issues. Hope that helps, Stevie boy. Cunt.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right? That being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
You cunts like to pretend that by disagreeing with your rhetoric in your literature and videos, we must have not actually consumed the media. This may be the case with some, but I'm fairly certain that the fact that most responses take on a point-by-point deconstruction type of format makes your point more than slightly invalid. Try again next time, cunt.
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now? Does it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it maybe? Nah, it's fine, it's the feminazis, we have to stop them. They're taking away our video games. Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but I can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
Actually, it's not the anti-SJW law that debunks those studies, cunt. It's people in professions that require them to either prove or debunk these studies. We merely report on the fact that they've been debunked, or, more often than not, point out that the study that you're referencing doesn't actually support the point that you're trying to make, and it's been debunked. As far as video games go, I'm not very informed on the whole Gamergate thing, but I'm pretty sure that the cunts are upset over the fact that people like Anita Sarkeesian would like to change the games that they love over their own hurt feelings.
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out, at least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people in their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
Now, I don't particularly like to use terms like towelhead or camel fucker. I did use the term pig fucker in my first video, but that was referring specifically to Islamic terrorists. I called non-Islamic terrorists cum jockeys, for the record. As I stated in that video, I don't hate Muslims. I hate Islam. In the exact same way that I hate any other harmful ideology, I hate the ideology itself, not the adherents. At least, not all of the adherents. A good person is a good person, even if they hold some flawed beliefs. I would be entirely willing to sit down with a Muslim to have a conversation with the same expectations for conversation that I mentioned earlier. Facts and statistics are worth more than feelings and comfort.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general? If so, what? Okay, just step up, just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk. If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
Yes, I do deny that systemic racism against black people is a thing. Not racism in general, mind, but systemic racism. That being said, I believe strongly that racism is a terrible thing, and that to be racist is to hold an illogical, harmful point of view. The reason that we criticize Black Lives Matter is because they're a bad group of people. The beliefs espoused, the actions displayed, and the attitudes shown by both their leaders and their most vocal members have proven this. Don't fall into the trap of conflating Black Lives Matter, the group, with black people, the people. As far as addressing racism goes, as somebody who supports Black Lives Matter, would you even allow us to be heard, or would we be white-splaining?
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black-on-black crime, when are you going to do a video about white-on-white crime and what we, as white people, can do to solve the problems in our community?
I haven't done one, and I don't plan to. Violence happens between all races and within all races, and people of all races can be either victim or perpetrator of that violence. The statistics are what they are, and there are certainly larger amounts of in-race violence within some races than there are in others, but this isn't a problem that will be solved by the likes of me.
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, "No! No, we have to stop him! We've got to debunk him now! Ah!"
Well, that's actually quite simple, cunt. Harmful ideas are harmful ideas, regardless of who's spouting them. Milo could be a 67-year-old male, and the reaction would be the same.
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity? And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
Steve Shives. Stop strawmanning, Steve Shives. Nobody is claiming that you're only racist if you identify as racist. Identity politics is your thing, not ours, cunt. Next!
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment as are well documented in various studies, then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way? And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
It isn't racist to discuss these issues at all, cunt. But I've already explained my stance on systemic racism, and without racism being systemic, your point kind of falls apart. It fails to take into account the large amounts of non-blacks who face struggles and therefore could be seen to have less opportunity. We could, of course, take similar affirmative action type steps to boost them up, and then, of course, for equality, we'd need to do the same for everybody else who faces any struggle that might take away their opportunities. And then, of course, what we have is not equality of opportunity, but of outcome. The fact is, none of us have true equality of opportunity because we're all born with different traits, abilities, etc. The solution isn't in boosting up those who are different, it's in not discriminating against them in the first place. And we have many laws in place to ensure just that, at least as far as workplaces and the like are concerned. When it comes to the day-to-day stuff, as shitty as it is, it's a matter of having thick skin. People will hate people for stupid reasons and say and do stupid things as a result of that hate. When the things that they do cross certain lines, there's always the option of police involvement. When the things that they say cross lines, all you can do is suck it up because the alternative is censorship.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter are both perfectly valid statements. That doesn't change the fact that Black Lives Matter has quickly devolved from a righteous statement of anger to a racist, sometimes terroristy group, or the fact that All Lives Matter probably actually was started by people who were butthurt that you would only mention black people. Now, All Lives Matter is by far the more legitimate movement to support. I'll take butthurt over bullets, cunts.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts? If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
Now, cunt. It's not that we think that men who fight for equality must be doing it to get laid. It's the men who subscribe to this form of feminism, today's form of feminism, the feminism of the current year, a feminism that actively works to make things harder for men. Those men are assumed to have an ulterior motive because we're giving them the benefit of the doubt and not just assuming that they're fucking retarded.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina? All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
What am I doing to stop this behavior? Not a single fucking thing, cunt. Believe it or not, most men actually have the mental capacity to not be brainwashed when they're insulted. My personal view is that you shouldn't insert your voice into the public arena if you're unwilling to face criticism, even if that criticism may contain some mean words. Basically, if you're gonna fucking spout vitriol, I'm gonna correct you, and to hell with your feelings.
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics, what have they got to do with the argument? Deepak Chopra, for example, a man who trots out an endless stream of pseudoscientific quantum woo bollocks, has nearly 3 million followers. So what? Those people follow him because he tells them what they want to hear. Why even mention the number of followers you have? What difference does it make?
It makes absolutely no difference. Points to you for asking a reasonable question, cunt.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers, but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms, and whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are #triggered, as they say?
Anti-SJWs, and more specifically anti-feminists, need to use avatars and images to represent ourselves because people on your side of the spectrum have a tendency to try and get people who disagree with them fired from their jobs. As the majority of us require things like food, shelter, and electricity, we need to be wary of losing our sources of income. As for anti-SJWs being triggered when they're called out, I suspect you're talking about the fact that they respond when they're called out. This isn't being triggered, it's how a conversation works. We don't tend to exercise the block button like you guys. We talk back.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people. And I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description fold or flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads. I mean a public and ongoing anti-bullying stance. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves? You kind of like it, don't you? I mean, if that's your thing, I guess that's just what you're into. Just makes you a dick.
I can only speak for myself, even though basically everybody else has said the same goddamn thing already, but here goes. I do not condone any attacks on people that I respond to in my videos. That said, you're all fucking adults, and I have no control over you. I neither condone any attacks, nor take responsibility for any attacks that happen as a result of seeing my videos. Fucking good enough, cunt?
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
I don't find it hard to believe at all. I'm positive that many feminists are, in fact, harassed online. The problem is that you cunts tend to stretch the definition of harassment to cover things that are not, in fact, harassment. Disagreement, for example.
Do you understand the key importance of reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That's simply going to Google Scholar, doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research. That you have to have a much broader overview to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem. You do realise that you're as much of a social justice warrior as those you critique. It's just that you espouse a different form of social justice, a rather less considerate, rather less forgiving, rather less kind form of social justice.
As far as your first statement is concerned, good on ya. Again, perfectly logical. As for the second, about us being SJWs, I can see what you mean there, and I'd be fine with that. You see, cunts, he's playing off the fact that SJWs, as in the activists, and social justice warriors, the words, are not inherently linked. In fact, to be entirely honest, SJWs aren't warriors, nor do they fight for social justice. But yeah, I'd be a social justice warrior for certain if the term described what we do. It's not the words that are bad, it's your beliefs.
If you identify as an egalitarian, then I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of the concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
I'm not afraid to say when I don't know something. I am entirely unfamiliar with John Rawls or any of his work, and am in no position to comment on it.
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom? If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that says about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinions.
I entirely believe in the right to put out unpopular opinions. If you do as well, then can you ask the rest of the SJWs why they like censorship so much? When you cunts claim that we're censoring you by making response videos, does the hypocrisy ever sink in?
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
The boobs, cunt. The boobs.
Do you really think you can spend your entire life in a perpetual state of emotional immaturity? Do you actually imagine that you will be able to perpetuate your adolescence for your entire existence? Wait, didn't somebody else ask this one? Wait, I gotta... Ah, fuck.
Yes, cunt. It's the ones who aren't for safe spaces and special treatment that lack maturity. See, an SJW will call an anti-SJW immature because they tend to believe that the reason that we disagree with them is because of some lack of understanding on our part. An anti-SJW will call an SJW immature because they feel the need to be coddled and to have somewhere to hide from dissenting opinion. You know, like fucking children. So I hope I answered your questions, cunts. If you have any more, feel free to send them my way. I've mentioned multiple times now that I'm open to discussion. As for the rest of you cunts, I'm gonna end this video here. It's been a fucking long one, and I'm sure that those of you who made it through just haven't had the fucking overdose kick in just yet. When it finally does, do me a solid and ask God if he knows why the fuck my wine's been watered down again. Fucking drunk. Remember to visit Little Miss Anonymous's channel and maybe make a fucking donation. The cunt deserves it. Also, consider checking out Skeptic Alert. Funny fuckers, those guys. Well, that's it. Fuck off!